Hi, I'm Sarah Schatz, and you're listening to Kindle Curiosity, a podcast for curious souls where we explore the creative process. This podcast is powered by the Kindle community on Patreon to keep things advert-free. Take a seat by the fire, and let's welcome today's guest. So before we get to today's episode, I just wanted to tell you a couple of little updates. One is something just personal to me that I'm really excited about. I found a used kiln recently for pottery. Pottery is something, if you listen to the first episode where I tell my origin story, it's something I've always loved. And I've always kind of dreamed that one day I would have a backyard pottery studio. But it was always kind of that airy, fairy, one day kind of thing. And it's becoming real, y'all. I really want to thank my Patreon patrons because your pledges supported my half of the used kiln. Mom and I bought it together. And of course, the electricity cost more than the kiln itself, so it didn't totally pay for the whole everything. But I'm just so thankful that you guys helped support one of my creative dreams. I'm sure you can just hear how smiling I am right now. We're doing the first bisque firing right now. So you'll definitely start to hear more about that over on my Instagram. I'm going to be showing some behind the scenes. Let me know if you'd like, what do you want to hear about it? If there's anything you're curious about with that. If you missed last week's podcast, Camp Kindle is going on right now and you can still join in. It is a creative retreat exclusive for Patreon, but you can join in for as little as $1 pledge. It doesn't matter what level you're pledged to. And last week we did some watercolor washes, we've done a scavenger hunt, and we're about to start a collaboration for a zine. So if you'd like to submit to our zine, hop over to CuriousPixie.com and join the Patreon. We'll be taking submissions for about another month, so even if you're hearing this in August, you can still join in. We're having all kinds of submissions on the theme of wonderment. So it might be drawings, paintings, poems, photographs, pressed flowers, sun prints, absolutely anything you can submit, and I'm so excited. This is the first zine we've done, but it may not be the last. So you may hear in this episode that I'm talking about Camp Kindle like it's in the future, and that's because it was in the future when we recorded. I like to record episodes in advance. And so this was from a few months ago. Before I launched the podcast, actually, I recorded several episodes just to make sure. It made me a little less anxious to know that I had several episodes recorded before I started to release them. So even though I'm talking about Camp Kindle as something in the future, it's happening right now. And if you're listening to this in the future, if it's not summer of 2018 where you are, you can still join in because the camp sessions are archived. And so you can access sessions that we've done a year ago or a couple years ago, all through the Camp Kindle website, which you get access to as a patron of any pledge level. So I'm super excited about camp right now. I'm super excited about this episode. I know you're going to love it. It was one of my favorites, but all of them are one of my favorites. I'm starting to see why podcasters say that. So without any further ado, let's get to today's episode. Blanca Munguia is a master crafter, founder of the Heartfelt Workshop, a space for children to learn to craft and sew. I'm so glad you're here.
Me too. I'm excited.
So before we talk about what you do now, let's time travel back to when you were a little girl and talk about what you were curious about then.
Oh boy, I am a very curious person. I grew up the first years of my life in kind of a rural setting in Nicaragua, in a place called Chinandega. It was an amazing house with a huge yard. So I was always intrigued by the patterns of leaves and the flowers. Mud was something important for me. So I remember mud cakes and decorating them the prettiest way I could. And back then, it was just, I would always be making things. So nature was a lot of my fountain of inspiration. I loved it. I also have a lot of siblings. So, being the little one with my 3 older siblings and my 2 younger ones, it was always a full house. So my curiosity around them and learning about them. I love being with people. So that was me when I was little. I remember having dolls, but not necessarily role play with my dolls, but make things for them. I would make clothes, I would make food. And then my entrepreneurial thinking was there ever since I can remember. When my brother was born and I would see my mom buying those little bottles of food, I was like, I can make doll food. And then I would go to the garden and make doll food. And then I'm going to export in my little brain. I was always making things. So that was me when I was little. I enjoyed being around older people, and I would love having tea with my aunt. She would actually call my mom to bring me to her city so I could have tea with her friends. I don't know. That was me growing up with older people. I always loved my grandmas. They were also super, super constant and inspiring in my life when I was little till today. So I'm very family, creative, curious. I don't know. That's me.
So did you make things with your grandmothers?
I did. One of my grandmas, she had a bakery.
Ooh.
Whenever I visited, my country went through a rough time during the 80s, so we had to leave. We moved to Costa Rica, but whenever I visited back and I went to León to visit my grandma, oh my goodness, the whole bakery was at my command. And so I had the lady that made the frosting roses. She would teach me and I would do it. And then the lady that made vanilla cakes, she would teach me and I would do it. And my grandma was always there teaching me to make little empanadas, little pastelitos. It was so, so fun. My other grandma, we shared music together a lot. And she had a lot of sayings that I still use. So they were both very, very powerful, they had hard lives and they were always happy. So I remember that it was just so amazing to be with them. So much wisdom that I wish I would have had more time.
I didn't really know my grandmothers, so I love hearing stories of bonding with grandmothers. That's so sweet. Yeah,
I love when my children now are with my mom and with my mother-in-law. They are both so great. I try to keep them in contact because they both live in Nicaragua and we're here in Washington. So I tell them, call them, just say, hi, how are you, Grandma? I'm thinking of you. You'll make their day. And my kids know my grandma because of my stories. So that's how they have to be with their grandmas.
And so how many kids do you have?
I have 3 kids. My oldest is 18 and going to college this fall.
Oh,
I know. It's mixed feelings. The middle one is 15 and my baby is 12. Not baby, but he's 12. The 3 of them are so different and yet so alike. Their personalities are so interesting, but they're happy kids, thank goodness. And Eddie is the best person I could have ever find in this world to share my life with.
Aw. And so did your kids inspire let's start talking about your heartfelt workshop.
Okay, so Don't Grow Up, It's a Trap. I fell on it. When I graduated from high school, I studied law and I became a lawyer. Although I always loved crafting and making and also starting businesses because that has been something good and bad. But I have started so many things because I just have so many passions and things that I like. So I started studying law, I finished. And then side, I always loved teaching. And so I started teaching at a preschool. So it was really crazy for some time. I literally many times changed in my car into my suit after teaching preschool to go to the law office. But then there was something there that I still had that it wasn't enough. So my children inspired me to start making handmade cards. That was at first. So they started in Nicaragua. Kids have a social life that I don't think I have had while I'm an adult. They go to so many piñatas and parties. So I remember starting making little cards, like gift tags and for my kids. And then, can you make some? Can you make some? Can you make some? So I started making them. And in no time, oh my goodness, I was making 1,000 per week. And my little fingers couldn't cut any more things. And then my boys were born. And I just didn't love everything I could buy for them. I was picturing them in their white linen shorts and their light linen shirts. So I started them, I made them. And then I started taking orders and exporting. And I opened my shop and da da da. But then we moved here. And so I stopped that for a while. And then I started working as a Spanish teacher, which I loved. But again, that little worm inside of me. So I'm like, where can I combine my passions? I can teach, which is my favorite thing to do, and I can craft, which is my other favorite. So I started and I said, okay, I am going to make this shop and let's see how it works. I definitely started before I was ready, as usual. But now it's been 4 years and I have 80 students.
Wow.
I have classes from Monday through Saturday. I also have adults. So if I add that, it's like 100 students. And definitely I can see it's more than teaching sewing. What I do with this, it's mostly girls that come, but I teach them self-confidence and that everything can be figured out, which is what I feel it's more than the sewing. Yeah, you'll be able to fix your socks and put your buttons back, but it's more than that. So I like to think that I don't only teach sewing, but I help them discover their potential and not only to make things, but to see life different, to not be afraid of making mistakes, to just do and to be happy.
I love that. And it sounds so unique. And that must be why you have so many students, because there's not that much opportunity for things like that.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that the parents constantly tell me because, well, I have very good memory. That's one of my very good things. So I remember the names of all the parents and siblings. So whenever they tell me, oh, my little brother is sick or da, I care for them and I care for their families. So I know, how is so-and-so? How is he doing? And just as when they don't do something right, I tell them, nope, I'm sorry, but you do not treat people that way. Or like I always say, they come in and they don't say hi. No, I'm sorry. You have to go back and come in again because manners matter and you have to do things the right way since you start. Or just when I say, oh, Miss Blanca, do you have bad friends? Like, no, you have friends or you have acquaintances or you have people who are not your friends. But you don't have bad friends. It's either your friend or not.
Right.
And so I listen and we talk, and so it's super fun.
And so what kind of projects, you mentioned sewing, what kind of things do you teach them to sew?
I teach them to make, you would be so impressed at the things they make. Dresses and nightshirts and pants and shorts with pockets and bags and pillows. Of course, they would be making stuffed animals forever, but I have a deal with them. I say one clothing, one non-clothing. And then if they make a bag, they're like, does the bag count towards a clothing item so I can move on to another stuffed animal? Well, the point is that they learn to sew, right? And that they can make things, and that pleasure and that confidence of doing something. So I let them. I am not very strict.
But it's all transferable. It's the same skills.
Yeah. So I say, well, we do this reversible. We learn how to do something that's reversible.
There you go. Yeah, I'm slowly starting to learn to sew from my mom. We did some projects growing up. Like I remember I made a little sleeping bag for my Beanie Babies and some real simple things like that. But it's like you said, it's leveling up to the clothing that seems daunting. So I think it's amazing that you're making them do that, like, and not stay in the Beanie Baby world, because it's some confidence when you make something you can wear. It's like, wow.
Yes. They go to school with their clothes. And the first thing they tell me, I wore my shorts to school last Wednesday and everybody said, oh, those are pretty short. And I said, I made them. And nobody could believe me. And I'm like, see, there is so much more that you can make.
That's amazing. I love it. So let's kind of go backward a little bit and talk about the very first idea for the Heartfelt Workshop, and then making that from idea to reality.
This is tricky because the way I found my brain works, it's in reverse. Right? I don't know if it's good or bad, but when I have an idea in mind, I look at the final thing. And then I say, okay, what do I have to do to get here? So I start going back. And then that's how I am not a very neat person. So this is the process that I have found that works better for me, even though it may not be intuitive. I don't know, it works for me. So I remember when I started thinking of the shop, And immediately I said, ooh, it's a beautiful place that it's going to be like, I'm inviting you to my craft room and I will be in a magazine for the best camps and for the best class. And when you enter the shop, you will feel happy and creative and da-da-da, and I'll picture all the fabrics and I'll picture this. And so I'm like, okay, how do I get here? This sounds great, but how do I do this? So I started at home. So to me, it was first testing the waters. How the area where I live is very competitive. Children have, oh my goodness, little or no unstructured time. Very, very, very academics, very into sport, and very into music. Like you have to have straight A's. You have to be a travel soccer player, and you have to play an instrument. And those are the things that are super important, and every child does it. And I'm like, well, what if you're not sporty? I was not the sporty type. So what if you're not? So I said, okay, I don't know how it's going to work. So I opened for a camp at my house. So I transformed my basement that has a separate entrance, and I started advertising, and I started one summer with 25 girls. My goal was 15 and I had 25. So this was like, this can work.
Yeah.
This can totally. And then I remember I had it here, so I have to move on. The next step is the shop. Next step is the shop. And I kind of wrote a business plan, but my husband worked on that more than I did. The business, the setting up all that papers. I really didn't do much of that part at first. And then I remember one January 2nd, I said, okay, this cannot stay like this. I have to move on. So I went online, created the company, boom, done. Oh, company's done. All right. And then I said, okay, I'm going to start looking for a place, and then I'll figure out what else is next. And so I remember that's where we were together in a group.
Right.
And I remember I posted, I said, guys, there is one place that I found and it's expensive, crazy expensive, but I feel that this is it. Well, that was not it because it didn't work. That was not it because it didn't work out. But there was a better place waiting for me. But that day, I remember my husband was in, I don't know, Uganda or Benin, I don't know, because he traveled so much. I don't know which part of Africa he was. And I said, Addie, I found a place. I have to fill out an application. And I don't know, I don't have a huge bank account to support this, but I think it can work. And he's like, okay, let's do it. So I rented the place and I said, okay, this is it. Literally, I had to pay the rent three months. That's it. That's all. I said, okay, it's going to work. And it has worked. So that's how it all started. And then to what it is today, it has evolved for the better. And there's so many things to make better, to improve, starting with my marketing. But I'm so happy.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm not a parent yet, but I like to ask moms and dads, did becoming a parent change your view of creativity at all?
I think so. Definitely. I can see how my children influenced me so much. When I look back in my creative process and in my business world, they have to do everything with it. They were the ones giving me the ideas. I also wanted to be a present mom. I believe that working is so important for everyone, not only for money, but to become what you are called for. Working is super important for yourself and to contribute all that you have to the world. But I also believe that my children are the first thing in my world. So I was always trying to find that activity that would keep me connected and that would help me be present. I don't know how to explain this, but the fact of being home when they're home was so important for me. And I have to say that was the hardest part of opening my shop. Because for the first time in forever, I couldn't be home in the afternoons when they came back from school. Because working with children, it's after school.
Right.
And that's exactly when I was not home. I'm telling you, that first year, I felt like the worst mother in the whole entire world. But they were so encouraging. And they were like, no, but you're doing what you love. Oh, no, but look at what you've done. I don't think I could have done this if I was not a mom.
So if someone wanted to start crafting with their kids for the first time, where would you suggest that they start?
Okay, I would start first with paint outside the lines. A place that you don't care how it's going to get. You're not looking for neatness and perfection. That's to begin with. And to let them do it. It's not how I want you to do it. And it's not how I want it to look.
Right.
It's how you want to do it. That's the first thing I would say. Let them choose, even if they don't match, even if they look crazy. I remember telling my kids, and this has nothing to do with crafting, but I've been very much on, how you dress and how you look, but not because you have to look in a certain way. It's just that you feel better. You don't have to look messy all the time. But when you're crafting, it's fine. You can do whatever. You can get your clothes dirty. I've done it with them. Like, what is a snowy day in my house? I go on Creative Bug and I get a watercolor class. We sit in the dining table and we get some paint on the floor sometimes, but then we clean it or not. But we spend time doing it. And everybody, I encourage them. I have tons of coloring and paper and scissors. I remember giving Fatima scissors since she was like 2. Instead of, no, stay away from them. Say, no, this is how you cut. This is how you use them. Because I had them everywhere.
That sounds so much like my childhood. And my mom, she didn't have a craft shop, but she was the Girl Scout leader. And we were a very crafty Girl Scout troop. So every week she was making a new craft and we would test it first, at home. And then we would go and do it with the whole troop. And we always had some different craft project going on.
So fun. And then I would also say the perfection thing, we have to put it on the side. And it's not about what we say, but about what we do. And I'll give you a very small example. I remember whenever I started the crafting thing with my kids, like, no, it doesn't have to be perfect. Who cares? And my oldest was particularly very perfectionist. And I would always try to make it feel relaxed and don't worry. Da, da, da. Then one day she goes and she makes something and she throws it away. I'm like, why? That was so great. And he's like, but it can be better. And it was this tiny person in front of me, but it could be better. And I'm like, what do you mean? It was great. It's not going to be perfect. And she's like, well, then when your cards are not perfect, you rip them and throw them away too. I'm like, okay.
They're watching you.
They're watching you. So if you're all stressed when crafting, if you are all concerned about balance and symmetry and perfect color schemes, that's not a good one.
Yeah, I know that's something I'm working on myself. For a long time, perfectionism seemed like a useful skill. All through college and like organized academia, it helped me along, A+ student. But now I'm working from home and it's kind of like I see the dark side of it. It can keep me working too much. And, at school, there's a limit. You can only take so many hours of classes. When I'm my own boss, I can sit here from the first thing in the morning and keep redoing it and redoing it and redoing it and redoing it till 2 a.m. And so I'm really trying. It's hard work. I call myself a recovering perfectionist because I'm making like baby steps away, but I'm never going to be completely like free of that.
And you know what? Inspired by that, because I also have that, is that I tell my students, practice makes better. Practice makes better. And they immediately go, no, practice makes perfect. I'm like, nope, there is a never perfect. And the quicker you figure out that there is no perfection, the happier you'll be.
Yeah.
Because you miss out on the fun when you focus on perfection.
Yeah. There's a YouTube channel that I watch, the AB Family, and Mama B is always saying that to her daughter, that there's no such thing as perfect. And I'm like, wow, like that is such a good mantra. I need to take that on board. There's no such thing as perfect. There's no such thing as perfect.
Don't we all? Yes. I don't know what is it with perfectionism, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And the fear of making mistakes.
This is kind of a good transition back to that you're teaching more than sewing. So maybe talk a little bit more about that.
I have taken so many classes to improve myself. I am a work in progress. That's how we all are. But if we start learning those things early, like I remember when I first came across April Bowles and Mai and all of these things, and then Marie Forleo and how what you do in your life is so tied to how you feel, because we can't separate our human part with our business. Totally the opposite. So why did it take me 42 years to realize? Why can't we encourage our children to grow with this wisdom, So that's what I try to do with my own children and with my students. I started getting so much into mindfulness. I want to be mindful of what's happening in my life. I want to enjoy the bite that I have. I want to enjoy the moment that I'm sitting with everybody. I want to enjoy my class. I want to enjoy what I'm doing. I do this with my students because they're not in the middle of one project and they're like, oh, I think I know what I'm going to do next. Let's finish this first. Let's get through this first. Or, oh, I made a mistake. I'm going to rip it. It's so good that it has a solution. We can fix it. It doesn't matter. Oh, but no, there are no oh, but it can only get better. It can only get better. So I think I am optimistic in general. And I try to, how do I say this? To transfer that to everybody. Of course, there are not great days every day. And I say in Spanish, the verb to be has two verbs. One is permanent and one is temporary. And I always say, I'm a happy person, but I am not always happy, which is something that it's true. But in bad moments don't make me an unhappy person. It's just an unhappy second, an unhappy moment, but not an unhappy person. I am a happy person in general. Then gratefulness. I try to, and with little things. Oh, my dad is so late picking me up. I'm like, don't say you're late when he walks in the door. Just say, thank you for picking me up. You don't know what happened. So I try to do that. And I think that is more than my sewing. I think that's what the girls at the shop really like the most. And I hug them. I mean, I don't know, but that's very different from where I'm from. Our personal space is much smaller and we're more used to hugging, and I know it's different here, but you cannot not hug a girl on her birthday or when she finished the dress. I have to hug them.
That reminds me of my gymnastics coach. I wasn't very good. I wasn't sporty either, but I stayed in gymnastics because she was very much like that. And so even though I really struggled, I worked really hard because I liked being there. And then I ended up coaching gymnastics, and I was a pretty good coach because I wasn't a good gymnast. So I knew how to help them improve. And so I did that all up through into college a little bit, coaching gymnastics. And she taught us so much more than gymnastics that I still remember.
Yeah, I hope I can be that. That's what motivates me, that you can leave seeds of happiness and seeds of nice memories that you can go back to anytime.
Yeah, just wait 5 or 6 more years. They'll be coming back to you. And this was like an extra question, but do you have any creative projects that are not around your workshop that you're working on, like just for you?
So my workshop is great, although I realize it is not necessarily a business. It's my job. So I'm still trying to find ways to turn this into a business. So I do have other projects. I want to make some kits I recently had an aunt who survived cancer. And I remember going to the hospital and not being able to bring anything. So I want to make felt arrangements, but towards this, because those rooms, it's just not pretty, to say the least. It's nothing, it's just so tight and tense. And I would love to start this as a family business, to make these flowers towards that and send them with a encouraging or happy note. So I don't know where this will take me, but I do have that in mind. And then our ultimate family dream, but like ultimate is to be able to go back to Nicaragua and make a children's museum.
Ooh.
That's like the ultimate dream. I believe in education as the way of getting out of anything, especially poverty that I've lived with, in my country. So, and I believe in childhood, in the importance of them growing up, knowing that there's so much that they can do. And so this children's museum, it's a very creative, ultimate dream. We've talked about it and dreamed about it, but it's gonna come someday.
I love that. And so what would be in the museum?
Oh my goodness. We already have some of the areas planned. Definitely there would be a history part where you could enter, caves and then you could see sarcophagus and mummies. And then you could enter and see Olympics and Greece and pottery. And then everything interactive and touchable. And then there could be a little city. Being a citizen is so important. Patriotism is so important. We are suffering right now in my country so much. So many protests because we have a terrible dictator. And literally, to me, besides not choosing right leaders, it's the lack of education. So they bet on an ignorant people so they can stay in power forever. And having a little city in the museum with even roads, you have to respect the traffic light. Have police officers that you can respect, and then having an art area. Oh my goodness, that would be so amazing with all things. Imagine all the paintings available, not originals. That would be hard to have a Starry Night in my museum, but so that they can learn and do, and very interactive. Oh, definitely about the body. I went to the Children's Museum in Costa Rica, and it was so nice. The body and the mouth, how to take care of it. I don't know.
I love it. I love your dream. We have a really great museum here. It's called the Amazeum, and it's a children's science museum. So it has some of what you're describing. It has like a little store where you can be the cashier, and it has an art area where there's like glass and you spray the paint and you can like make art on the glass, and then there's little like blocks, and there's a water area where they can play, and then there's like some history parts where it's like a farm. And we took my niece, and I think she was like 3 or 4 at the time, and she loved it so much. We don't have kids, so anytime someone visits with kids, I'm like, we have to go to the museum because I want to go.
Sure. Yes, and imagine a museum like that teaches them about Nicaragua itself. What do we produce? What are our trends? So something like that. Oh, geography. Imagine how cool. And science, of course, you have to have technology in there as well.
Yeah. And you learn so much more when you're tactile. And you live near DC, right? So you get to go to all the amazing museums there.
Yes, it is so amazing. We recently went to the National Gallery of Art, was it, Fatima? Yes. And I had been to one part. I've been here almost 7 years, and I never knew there was another tunnel that brings you to another building. And Matisse's cutouts are there. It was incredible. I didn't know.
I lived in Maryland for a year. I worked at a theater company, and I would go into DC on my day off when I could. And there's so much, like you can't see it all. And so I always suggest when people travel that they give more time, because I remember when I was really young, we went with a Girl Scout trip to DC, and they tried to take us to all the Smithsonians in one day. And it was so stressful because it was like as soon as you could look at something like, oh, it's Dorothy's ruby red slippers, they were tearing us away to take us to the different museum. And I'm like, but we just got here and it's huge.
Yes. It's better to focus on one.
Right. And really soak it in. And I'm sure that's so inspiring for you, and imagining how you could translate that back to Nicaragua.
Yes. And it's so fun when after we go to a museum or we have dinner together every night. We have late dinner. And I don't know how here in the US they have early dinner. I don't know how parents do it. We have dinner at 8. And after dinner, we almost every night have to talk. It's so de mesa, we say, and that's our favorite. So everybody talks about their day, and everybody talks. We listen. So whenever we've had some museum thing in our mind that day, we talk about it, and it's fun to dream about it together.
Yeah, a whole family dream.
Yes. So it is something fun to share.
Yeah, when you have your museum, you'll have to come back to the podcast and tell us.
Yes.
Tell us all about that.
Tell you all about it. Yeah. One day we were driving to Florida because my son was going to play football. It was so long. I would never drive again to Florida. But like when we were driving through Jacksonville, there was the big ad of the lottery. It was like 200 million. After 10 hours, we had talked about everything. So I'm like, what will we do with that money? So the kids were sleeping, or I don't know what they were doing. But Eddie and I started talking about how we could spend the money. And we realized that, of course, we had money for the museum. And then we started, 10 million for this, 10 million for that. And then good thing was that we realized how we wanted money not to buy things. We wanted money to cover needs. Like, we want a house that we paid for that I will not own until 30 years. We want to travel. We would help the church, the school. I would give to all of my nieces and nephews, like 2 million, I think, each. And we were like, and yet we couldn't spend the money. We gave my dad a helicopter because he travels to the farm and he has to, the drive is like 4 hours. So, he can have a helicopter, so he can do that. And then my mother-in-law, and then my siblings, my sister-in-law. It was so fun, but there was money for the museum. That's the way. So I have to start buying the lottery.
So we've talked about a lot of different things, your museum dreams, your felt flowers, your heartfelt workshop. So what else fascinates you, Blanca?
Wow. What else fascinates me? Oh my goodness, that's so hard. Traveling fascinates me. Learning of other cultures, eating, trying new food is the best. I'm a frustrated chef. I would love to learn to cook. It's fascinating to me. All the tastes and flavors that you can create. I am very, very passionate about being everything you can and not holding back. Recently, I have been very passionate about accepting myself, not only my way of, and that's not to say that I can't change, because I believe we all can change for the better, but also more of a physical level and stop with the body negative body image. That has been very passionate. I've been super learning about that. I'm just so sick of how we have to look, and that's one thing. That's many things I am passionate about. I love markers and pens.
You're like me. You are fascinated by a lot of things.
Yes.
And I love that about you.
Watercolor paper is awesome.
Oh. I've recently started some tests with different watercolor papers because I like to do washes, like really wet, where the paint can just like stretch out and do really kind of surprising things. And so I've been using a really cheap paper. And it wrinkles when I do that. Like it doesn't, it kind of curls up no matter how many heavy books I put on top of it.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out why I didn't have that problem in college when I took painting class. And we used illustration board. So that's why I got really heavy-handed with the water, because with the board, it's very sturdy.
Yeah.
So I've been testing some different papers and like stretching the paper, like dip it in water and then you tape it down to a board. And the cheap paper can hold the paint if it's stretched properly. So I've been doing some tests because I'm going to have a virtual Camp Kindle, and we're going to do some little watercolor projects. So
fun.
I'm doing some little dabbles to see what supplies everyone needs.
That is so super fun. There is this paper that's super expensive. I didn't want to pay for it though. I didn't buy it.
Yeah.
The French paper that comes all glued together.
Yeah, I got a pad of that to test.
Is it the best?
I got a small one because it is very expensive and it is amazing. But what I found out was that if I use the stretching method to tape the cheap paper on a board, it's almost the same. Like, it's not quite the same because, it's very expensive paper, but it doesn't curl up on me anymore. So that's what I'm going to suggest to my students. They don't have to spend the big bucks.
Yeah.
And I'll link to the tutorial for that in the show notes if anybody's curious. Because we didn't do that in college. Like, I took all kinds of painting classes. We never stretched paper, but I guess my teacher didn't want to fool with it, so he was just like, buy the illustration board, which is kind of a good in-between. Like, it's not as expensive as the Arches paper, but it's easier to work with than the inexpensive stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I love trying new things, and I wish we lived closer together. We could make things.
Yes, it would be fun. Exciting to have a creative partner to paint and make things.
Yeah.
Thank goodness my kids are very much, especially my daughter, she loves all artsy and stuff. So we share that, although we don't have a lot of time for it, but we sew together and it's great. I could not think of my life without making something.
Yeah, me too.
And color, what would it be? So sad. I don't want to know.
So sad. So I think we could talk forever, so you may have to come back for another episode. But to wrap up this one, where is the best place to find you online?
Online is www.theheartfeltworkshop.com. And there's my email and you can message me there. I love getting messages. So that's the best place to find me.
And you're on Instagram, right?
Okay, this is where I have to work on. I said I have so many things to get better at. Instagram at The Heartfelt Workshop, and Facebook, I don't know what the address is, but it's The Heartfelt Workshop. That's something that when we talk again, I will be so good at.
I cheat a little bit. It's not the way you're supposed to do it, but I was being too perfectionist and spending too much time on marketing. So I'm spending most of my energy on Instagram and have it auto tweets my Instagram and it auto Facebooks. So
do you sit one day and write tons of?
No, I post Instagram whenever I want to, but then I use if this then that. I can send you the link and I'll put it in the show notes for anybody who wants to check it out. And so it links your Instagram to Twitter or to Facebook. So you only have to post in one place. So like I'll post a picture to Instagram and then it puts it on Twitter and it puts it on Facebook.
Yeah.
And obviously that's not as good as tailoring everything specifically for each platform. But, we don't have a million hours in the day to do all of that. So,
and the ability to take good pictures. I'm definitely not one natural photographer at all. And I just see kids this day and they have a good picture.
Well, maybe you should outsource to your students and get them to take photos. And then you can post those to your Instagram.
That's a good idea.
And for your shop, if people live near you.
I am in Vienna, Virginia.
So if anyone's in Vienna, Virginia, they should check out your shop.
Come visit me.
Yeah. I wish I lived closer. So I'm so glad that we could talk. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoy talking to you a lot.
That's it for today's episode, and I hope to see you at camp. You can find the show notes and a link to Camp Kindle at kindlecuriosity.com. And a big, big thanks to all of my patrons for your support and for making this podcast advert-free.